Have you ever been so thirsty that you would drink almost anything? My name is Dr. Bill Payne, the pastor of First Methodist Church in Live Oak. I remember when I was stationed in Iraq, there were days that it was so hot that you could fry an egg on a rock. And on one of those days, it was a July day, it was 127 degrees outside and the sun was beating down and it was really miserable. Well, I had been working outside doing some stuff and I got so thirsty, and I saw in the distance that there was a pile of bottles, and we had these stacks of water bottles. And it's the same kind of water bottles that you'd buy at Publix or some grocery store, plastic water bottles. And so I made a beeline over to one of those stacks of water bottles, thinking that I was going to satisfy my thirst. And I got to that and I pulled out a bottle and I opened it up and I went to drink it. And it was so hot. I couldn't get the first drop into my mouth. It was burning hot. That water inside those bottles was almost boiling. The sun and the plastic just was probably a deadly concoction considering the heat and the plastic. Nonetheless, I was so disappointed. I needed something to drink and I couldn't satisfy the thirst that I had. David understood that. David looks at in Psalm 42, he looks at the deer and he recognizes the thirst that that deer has. There's a dry spell and the water's all disappearing, and the deer is so thirsty. He's huffing and he's puffing, and it's nothing matters. Nothing else matters. When you're thirsty, so thirsty that you can't satisfy your need, nothing else matters. You're driven by this desire to drink. In Africa, in the dry season, when the water begins to disappear and the lakes and the streams begin to disappear, and you just have a little water left, all the animals are forced to go into these little ponds. And you know what else is there? Death. Crocodiles are there. And some of these antelopes, they know that there are crocodiles in those waters, but they can't stop themselves. They are driven to it by madness, and they go down to the water knowing that the crocodile can come out and kill them at any moment. Well, that's what thirst will do to you. And then David takes that and he sees it as an allegory. He says, in the same way that the deer huffs and puffs and pants and thirsts for water, my soul desires God. I thirst for God. You know, if you're really thirsty, you don't want Coke, you don't want lemonade, you don't want coffee, you don't want hot tea or hot chocolate. Oh, there's a place for all of those things. And I know that a cold Coke on a hot day can taste very good. However, when you are so thirsty that you are about to die, you want cold, clear water. That's the elixir of life. Nothing else can do for you what that will do. There are a lot of things that try to satiate our thirst. When you're hungry for something in your life, and you may not know exactly what it is and how you need to satiate it, you may turn to relationships, you may turn to work, you may turn to hobbies, or you may turn to 1,000 other things, trying to satisfy that deep gnawing, panting in your soul. But at the end of the day, they just leave you thirsting for more. If you've come to that point in your life where you've tried everything else and nothing satisfies that longing that you have, then it's time for you to go to God. In John 7, after the last day of the great feast of tabernacles, when the Jews pour out water in the temple, Jesus cries out that if anyone thirst, let him come to me. Let him come to me and drink of me, for out of me flows rivers of living water. You know, the Jews were in the desert. They were in the wilderness between Egypt and the promised land. And they were so thirsty. And they were begging God for something to drink. And Moses hit the rock, and out of the rock came the water. And that water saved them. And the Bible tells us that that water is symbolic of Jesus. Yes, Jesus is the water that saves our lives and gives us eternity. Stop trying to satisfy your thirst by drinking other things. Go to the fountain, find Jesus, and let Jesus meet your deepest longings. God bless you.